Tearscape is a 2D top-down action adventure that has had me hooked ever since it hit Steam on February 2nd. Now listen, if the blend of classic handheld Zelda games and Bloodborne gets you fired up, and that should, then you need to go ahead and lock in because this is that game. All in a dark, gothic world inspired by Game Boy Color pixel art. You play as a hunter commissioned by this entity known as the Great Mandate, tasked with slaying monsters in a dark, interconnected world filled with dungeons, nasty baddies, and hidden areas galore. The game establishes a pretty grim setting while dropping breadcrumbs of a deeper narrative at play right from the jump, which will have you leaning in close to find out more. But what I ended up enjoying even more than that was Tearscape's systems, exploration, and combat. Now these dungeon-like areas you travel through test both your combat skills and exploration awareness. That's right, you're going to need to keep your eyes peeled while defending that HP bar. Each dungeon introduces unique enemy designs based on the themes around you and of course some environmental hazards to keep you on your toes, but you'll also find rewards in the form of weapons, tools, or token upgrades. But what I noticed is many of the dungeons are optional. So again, this is Tearscape reinforcing player-driven exploration rather than straight-up boring linear progression, which I love this because when I explore a new area or uncover a hidden passageway, I feel like I've really earned whatever I might find. Second only to the atmosphere and overall vibe of the game, the exploration was the best part of the experience for me. You'll never know when you'll find a secret stairway under some furniture or a key in a chest hidden in some weeds. I honestly feel like I'm on a Scooby-Doo episode, checking every book on a bookshelf, hoping to find that secret passageway. And nothing beats that dopamine hit when you find that hidden corridor and you know there will probably be a reward for your troubles at the end. You'll encounter obstacles, locked paths, or unreachable areas that clearly signal the need for a new ability or a tool that you'll get later in the game. Like these bushes. I'm assuming I'll need an explosive or at least a hedge trimmer to get past, and I haven't unlocked that yet. And the map system supports the exploring and returning by allowing players to place markers, which become especially useful given all the optional paths, hidden content, and many walks back from a checkpoint after you die in combat. Now, you might have just stuck your nose up when I said die in combat. Like, that's only for somebody like Jake Dies Again, and not you. Well, let me go ahead and tell you, buddy. The combat in Tearscape is built around precision. We're talking Lagoon Tiny Sword on the Super Nintendo Precision, where if you start the swing of your sword just a pixel too much to the right or left, you'll hit nothing but air. And you can take that as frustrating, but I took that as a challenge and it just made me stay leaned up in my gaming chair because every enemy interaction needed my full focus. So basically every action, attacking, dodging, and sprinting consumes stamina. So you're always watching how much you sprint and exactly when to swing your weapon so you don't empty out your stamina meter. And this creates a deliberate pace when positioning, timing, and restraint, which is usually my personal downfall, must be kept in mind to survive these encounters. Now, I just explained how exploration is key, and there's some backtracking once you solve logic puzzles later on, or get a tool to reach an area you previously couldn't reach. And there's shortcuts, sure, but there's a lot of back and forth, which isn't bad when you're holding the sprint button, as you can watch me here zooting around the place. But as I said earlier, stamina drains when you do this. So it is highly important to manage your stamina. And since combat uses this as well, I can't tell you how many times I would sprint to a new area just to be met with multiple monsters and have no stamina to even swing my weapon. It is for sure the most important resource in the game, and you will want to level that up as soon as possible. And you might ask, how do you do that? So in combat, you'll earn tears from defeated enemies, which is basically like your XP. So to level up, you must rack up tears from defeated enemies. The tears level up 4 different stats: HP, stamina, weapon damage, and tool damage. Now, as a mediocre gamer myself, I'm usually the guy that immediately upgrades health, and then continues to upgrade it the most because I'm probably gonna get hit a lot considering my skill level. But stamina is of the utmost importance, so I found myself leveling it up even more than health. And speaking of healing is limited by a small number of flasks which need to be managed carefully because you only get 3 to start and they can only be replenished at checkpoint statues. So you really need to keep one eye on your enemies in exploration and the other eye on your health bar. Because like I said, you can only replenish health at the checkpoints once you're out of flask, and the checkpoints are insanely far away from one another considering the precise combat. Which is not good for somebody like me who's always knocking on death's door, and being taken back to the beginning of a level or dungeon after fighting for your life all the way to the point I am now is just a tragic loss. But in addition to leveling up your character, you will also find different weapons you can equip as a sword, a dagger, and a whip, which might be my personal favorite because every once in a while, you'll get an additional hit on the backswing. And every additional hitbox is monumentally important with this precise combat. And these weapons vary in damage output and stamina cost. So there's a trade-off between power and efficiency. Heavier weapons deal more damage but drain stamina quickly, while lighter weapons allow you to keep that pressure on them but at a cost of raw damage. Tools add another layer to the combat and exploration, with certain abilities opening new paths or providing a much-needed advantage in a fight. But what about defense? Well, you have your trusty shield to block, but the shield only minimizes the damage, not completely block it. So this isn't something I resorted to often. Plus, I like being on the offensive, whether it's working or not. But in some cases, you can use your shield to deflect enemies' attacks back on them for additional damage. Now this I did use from time to time because there's just something so satisfying about hitting a mage with their own fireball because you got their patterns memorized better than they do. But be careful playing with fire because if you die, you drop all of your tears and they remain at the spot you died. But you can only level up at the checkpoint statues. So knowing all that, and the fact that you get taken all the way back to the last checkpoint upon death, means you have to retry the level you just died in at the same level because you don't even have all the tears you earned in your last life to level up at the checkpoint. Your tears are still laying next to your previous lifeless body. And as a reminder, you don't have that much stamina. It's always just enough if you're first visiting a new level, because you're walking around carefully, not draining your stamina because you're swatting at monsters around every corner and watching your step. But when I die and I need to come back to that same spot to pick up my tears, well, I already know how to get there, and it's usually a trek. So being able to sprint back the whole way so I can start where I left off would have been nice. But no, I usually sprint for the first 1/5 of the way and I'm back to the walk of shame. Back to where my fallen tears are a reminder of my failure. On top of tears and leveling up, there are also tokens that you can equip that affect your hunter in a variety of different ways. And since you can carry 3 tokens at a time, you can basically make a build and personalize your character, which I really enjoyed. If you want to stack offensive advantages, tier collection, or stack abilities that aid healing, which I've said numerous times, stamina is the golden sauce in this game, so just something to think about. So between the weapons, leveling system, and tokens, the upgrade system is simple and approachable, but deep enough to keep you tinkering in that menu screen. On top of combat, I wouldn't call it platforming because you never technically leave your feet, but there is a kind of form of platforming when you have to sprint burst on the different moving and crumbling tiles on a timer you need to rush to perfectly, and some tiles that just cause damage and you'll have to strategize on how to get around. So some people describe this game as Souls-like, and I thought that was a bit of a reach until I reached the first boss. They have huge health bars, barely take damage, and only give you 1 hit to work with because that second hit is gonna take you out. So the margin of error is small to say the least. You can eventually learn the patterns and taste victory, but I get why people say Souls-like when you mix that with the combat system. But I'm telling you guys, the visual presentation is just everything. I literally visualize myself playing this game after I walk away just because it's dripping with that much cool factor. It just has that throwback gothic and dark fantasy atmosphere I love. And enemy and boss designs are in those grotesque cosmic horror-like forms, showing just what kind of dark world you've done got lost in. Now I will say this, I never really got lost into the lore of this game. The tones are there, some of the dialogue implies a gripping plot underneath the surface, but it never quite put me there. Gameplay and tones, aka the vibe, was super there, especially with the graphics. But there wasn't a story to grab me, but also I kind of think a deep narrative would have given you the comfort an RPG would give, and I don't think that's what the dev was going for, so I think this was by design and, well, executed perfectly. The sound design provides good clear feedback during combat interactions, and the music reinforces tension and isolation, but also catchy. But don't think of it like an earworm pop song stuck in your head type of way, but a dark, tense atmosphere that won't leave you alone, even when you turn the game off. The NPCs are placed pretty sporadically, and some provide guidance, others offer small side quests, and a few hint at broader implications within the setting ahead. And when it comes to the dialogue of the NPCs, it's pretty minimal and often suggestive rather than explicit, so they rarely develop into any extended story arc, so again, their narrative remains largely implied rather than explored at depth. But I'm pretty sure that was by design. But I will say there's also some meta humor in Tearscape to break it up, which I really liked. For example, some moments that make fun of the player for always choosing the decision or path that gives them more, despite it not making any sense or being generally worse for the story. So it breaks the fourth wall by calling the player greedy, and that got a good chuckle out of me, I'm not gonna lie. So all in all, Tearscape occupies a space somewhere between classic Zelda-style exploration and Souls-inspired combat design. Its biggest successes are in exploration and atmosphere. Now, I might have crashed out a time or two with the checkpoint placement and stamina constraints and hitbox strictness, but that's half my skill level and half impatience, and both are faults on my part. But the game finally whipped me into how it should be played and how progression, unfortunately, sometimes interacts with death. So as a whole, I really had a blast with Tearscape, and it's already given me hours and hours of enjoyment. So if you're impressed with all of that wrapped in a dark Game Boy Color game, then this one's for you.